To be honest with you, originally I wasn't going to discuss this topic, but I think that there is probably something interesting that needs to be said here. A lot of people neglect this aspect or this reality of being a young male. The duality, and this one affects black men particularly, quite egregiously, I would say. It's something that I experienced personally. I brought this up actually in the Carmelo Anthony videos I've made. If you haven't seen them, this is a similar retreading of this conversation, but this time on the more overtly aggressive side rather than, excuse me, one of self-defense. And so it is, and so I think one thing that's important, before we begin, is to explain that the main antagonist of my entire channel has always been Elliot Rodger. And that might sound funny, because it kind of is. He's dead. But in reality, what I'm raging against is how young men get pushed into acts of rage, and how young men get pushed into, to be quite frank sometimes, acts of evil and cruelty. And so, particularly, we're talking about Raja, who is Ramage Jackson's son. And if I understand the story correctly, up to my knowledge at this point, he went to, it appeared to be some backyard wrestling gig. He goes backstage and he gets pressed on. To be pressed on, for those who don't understand the vernacular, is to be tested physically by another male, or it is to be threatened and tested to see to which degree you will allow the other male to either take your stuff or to get you to yield. It is the human version of bucks bashing their heads against each other. It is truly, right? Just the human version of males, pressuring each other to see which one is going to yield to the other. As humans, we're a little bit more sophisticated, obviously, than a buck, but that is essentially what being pressed on is. Again, for those who don't know. And so, he gets pressed on by one of the carnies, and the carny is in a completely different headspace because wrestling is more or less a stage play. Functionally, it really is just a very physically intensive stage play of different storylines and acrobatics and physicality. So when you say wrestling's fake, that's not really accurate. It's not really fair. It's more so wrestling is a performance. It's like to say wrestling is fake is to say movies are fake. And it's like, ooh, right? Like that, you wouldn't say that. You know what I mean? It'd be like saying the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is fake, right? It's a performance. You know what I mean? And so he says, now they play a dangerous game, as case in point, where the carny then says to Raja, he can get his lick back, so to speak. At the end of the show, you can slam me down, you can hit me a few times, for real, and, we'll square it, right? And so, to me, it's a promo, basically. It's a promotion. It's the carny and the wrestlers hyping up a storyline or a crowd to get people invested. It's a wild card. No one would have seen it coming. It's going to make the show look good. Also, Raja is a streamer. I'm pretty sure he saw the cameras. It makes sense, actually. To be quite honest with you, the whole thing does make sense to get, attacked by Raja, the son of Ramage Jackson, on stage. Completely wild moment. But what happens, and again, this is for those who don't know, is Raja loses his mind. He attacks the carny viciously. I think he hospitalized him, if I remember different parts of the story. And so everyone takes this and they, it's the internet. So everyone kind of has to always do their thing. They have to take a sensationalized story and then they have to use it to paint their narrative. And so originally, for example, I heard Nick Fuentes say this, right?
Loitering at the gas station, riding their bikes around, and pretty soon you will find 1 or 2 or 3 more of them racing in to get in on beating the shit out of the white guy. 2, the other thing that they do is they will kick someone's head when the person's down. That's another thing that's unique. When a black person fights a white person, if the black person wins, they won't just knock the guy down and see whether the guy's going to get back up or whether he still poses a threat. They immediately, it's instinctual, start stomping the white guy's head in. They start kicking the white guy's head. Or they'll get on the ground and keep punching the white guy even if he's unconscious. And they'll just keep going. And so it's not just that they're violent, it's that there's no honor. No honor. No charity, no regard for human life. I would even go further and say it's not just about honor. A lot of times I see commentators in the replies, they'll say, these blacks, they never fight with honor. Forget about honor. There's no rules in a street fight. Everyone knows that. You're in a street fight, weapons, other people, it's fair game. It's the law of the jungle. You can't be the guy that gets the shit kicked out of him and cry about honor. It's not a matter of honor. In some sense it is, obviously that pertains here, but it's a reckless disregard for human life. They don't just want to stop the violent altercation. They don't want to subdue their opponent or their attacker, or if they're in a defensive situation, they want to kill the other person. And it escalates over nothing. It'll be a shove. Someone looks at them the wrong way. They're just white. The black person asks them for money or is giving them a hard time. And if the white person doesn't react in the right way, it escalates from that to them getting hit and knocked down to then attempted murder.
And I didn't know what he was talking about. And I didn't really care either, to be quite honest with you. Mostly because I recognize that Nick knows where his bread is buttered. And ultimately, he can't truly believe any of this, because if he does, it makes him, and it makes, to be honest with you, other white people, look like a bunch of cowards and weaklings. It makes you guys look very scared. And I'm like, this has to be for a specific audience. There's no way. There's no way. Like, there's just no way. Because, like, if you listen to what he's saying, it makes you sound insanely fearful. And it's like, you're not that scared of the big bad Negro. Maybe you are, I don't know. And that's the problem. Because it creates this duality in a young man. This duality where you're split between being a monster that people want to portray you as. Nick portrays black people in particular as honorless, brutal beasts who jump and attack people. But there's also the other side of that. And that's the side that does not allow you as a man to be a weak person. They won't let you live. They won't let you die. You see, because what I came to learn from after watching an Auburn Preach video was that Ramage Jackson himself called and pressed his son as well. I came to learn that Raja, who was live streaming his Twitch chat, was pressuring him as well, calling him all manners of names, essentially just saying that he's weak, essentially.
Now look, we've all seen the incident by now, all right? Nothing that we're going to discuss in this video is absolving Raja of anything. But I think it's important that we as men discuss how we influence and encourage others to engage in violence by making them feel lesser than because they don't live up to our idea of masculinity. His own father, that he desperately wants to make proud and to surpass, called him minutes before the assault and called him a gay person and clowned him repeatedly. And then his chat went to go clown his son
Let me call my son. Hey, yo. Because when I mentioned did you get jumped by a bunch of dudes in tights, nigga? Did you get jumped by a bunch of dudes in tights? No. Do I need to send my goons over there? No. You was hugging on a dude in some damn tights. Man, shut the fuck up. Man, you shut the fuck up. I looked at your stream, nigga. You were hugging on some dudes some booty shorts. Nah, I wasn't fucking hugging on nobody. Making shit up. I ain't make nothing up. All right, as long as you say. You never know. Y'all keep playing with me over there.
We're not a crash out. Oh, you're gonna see I'm a real crash out.
I'm a fake crash out. All right, bet. You about to see you about to see how fake of a crash out I am. I'm too nice, bet. But I don't believe in me getting disrespected too. People think this shit's sweet. People think this shit's a fucking game. I bet you wouldn't be talking like this if you was in front of me, nigga.
People were able to goad this guy into having the most extreme reaction, all because he was being diplomatic. That he accepted the other person's apology and moved on. Nah, nigga, you gotta get your respect. And people actually think this was an acceptable response. To me, if you think this is unacceptable, you got problems.
And at the end, there's a clip, again, from the Alba and Preach video I'll play, that goes a little something like this. And it's a rage that I recognize very deeply.
Tired of motherfuckers playing with me, bro. Real shit. One of them was a bitch and fucking bit me. I'm tired of everybody fucking playing with me and shit. Think I'm always playing and shit. Call me bitch and shit. Not no fucking bitch, bro. At the end of the day, I'ma stand up for my fucking self because I'm tired of everybody playing with me, bro. Real shit.
The rage of having to prove to others that you're not weak. The rage of being tired of having the whole world press upon you again and again and again. And a lot of people don't talk about this when it comes to young men, right? They don't talk about the fact that as young men, particularly black men, we are caught between these two sides. And you have to pick your poison, unfortunately. You're caught between, you cannot appear as a weak person. Least individuals will try to take advantage of you. And people seem to forget, as our society is wont to do, that men are humans. And we have brains up here. We have neurons that carry memories, trauma, that builds up over a period of time. And unfortunately, due to our physical strength and our stature, it can just come out in the worst possible way. That's what happened with Raja. Now, a lot of people might interpret this as a defense, and I want you to understand that the reason why I opened with what I opened, saying that the main antagonist is Elliot Rodger, is that understanding villainy is not justification for it. It is the antidote of which we stop the creation of these people. Because what doesn't help is the idea that Raja got here due to his black genetics. We're looking at the Nicholas Fuenteses of the world. The duality of man. The duality. And the feminists do the same thing, by the way. Make no mistake. The idea that it is innate, inherent. There's no way around it. It's just ingratiated in the existence of. For example, you see this on the Whatever podcast all the time, where Brian might bring up that men are oftentimes the victims of physical violence. And the lady will reply, well, that's men hurting other men. Now, to be quite honest with you, I'm not really sure what the point they're making is. That's kind of, yeah, humans hurt each other. I don't even know what even is being said here. But feminists do the same. So it's not just Nick Fuentes justifying, I guess, a light form of avoidant racism. That might be the best descriptor for it, avoidant racism. It's not that. It's women and feminists taking advantage, or manipulating at least, the reality of males' physicality. And saying that because males are physically strong, or because males have testosterone, males have more of a proclivity, for violence and attacking and harming others, they then have no empathy when males are attacked by other males. Why? Because they're all males. In the same way that Nick Fuentes groups up black people and he says, well, he gives a little, well, look, it's not all black people, right? But it's always black people. But it's the same thing. And so, essentially, what I'm trying to speak upon is that biological determinism, racism, even socialization, even the historical context of males operating in violence, are great ways to ignore the fact that young men are complex human beings to some capacity, and that they are created by the world that they live in. Their genetics are expressed in a particular environment, but it is the experiences in everyone else, whether it's bullying them, putting them down, calling them weak, or calling them a beast or monster, isolating them, pushing them into corners of society, that generates this rage. And you have to understand that no degree of empathy is counter to justice. It's no counter to heroism or doing what's right. Meaning that no matter how much I might be able to empathize with a villain, if their actions are immoral and they're hurting other people who haven't hurt them, then they need to be stopped. And as cartoonish as it might sound, I think the reason why it was always so cartoonish was to impart this lesson upon us when we were younger, so that when we're older, we're able to actually understand, empathize, and help other people in real life, instead of pretending that it's immutable traits that have generated and created all of this trauma and terrible behavior and activity amongst people. Again, no one person is just born a demonic monster that just wills for destruction. Even psychopaths don't even typically just will for destruction unto itself. There's always some type of story or something that builds up an individual that gets them to this point. And when it comes to young men, there's a world or a society that is constantly testing men again and again and again. And people don't understand that that is going to fracture the ego at some point in time. It is going to create a monster, a terrible person that spills their rage against innocent people. A lot of people don't understand that if you constantly are beating someone again and again and again, you are going to generate a rage and frustration in them that is going to spill out against the innocent or people who had nothing to do with it. And that's essentially what we saw with Raja. Like, this is, again, Nick Fuentes uses this as an example of the brutality of black people. But when you have no love in your heart, or when you're a smarmy jackass, and you don't care to actually make the world even 3% or 1% better, then you can just use this and just say, hey, look at this viral clip of a black man being violent. But with a true degree of intelligence and fairness, if you have a desire to avoid these things from happening, then you have to understand that Raja didn't get there because he was black. Raja got there because he had a father that called him gay. Raja got there because he had a Twitch chat that told him that he was weak for being pressed. Raja got there because, unfortunately, the duality of man is that on the one hand, we must prove ourselves as strong. On the other hand, if we do it the wrong way, if we don't do it correctly, we're a beast, we're a monster. We are the example that is then used to cascade onto the bestiality of the rest of, particularly, black males. And again, it's a rage and reality that I've had to experience quite a bit. That whole black fatigue thing frustrated me greatly because there's nothing new about it. There's nothing new about being frustrated or lambasting or stereotyping or putting down black men as violent, which is hilarious because as you can hear my extremely soft voice, and I particularly wear glasses, and I try to be very polite to people, I do not come off particularly as a monstrous person. And so, somehow I still get treated as if I am a monstrous individual because I'm black. It's an existence I've had to experience numerous different times. Do I experience it from everyone? No. No. In fact, there's a few times I've been out and about and some guy will come up and he'll ask me, be at the gas station. He'll ask me if I could give him some gas. And I'd be like, you know what? I've had car troubles too. I empathize with the struggle of being stranded. And so I say, no problem. I fill his gas tank up and I let him go. The person I did that for was white, by the way. In fact, that actually, just the other day, it was yesterday to the time I recorded this video. There's one guy, he comes up to me, he had many tattoos, and he too needed gas. And I don't know what it is about me that seems to be inviting to people. But he asked me for help, and so I helped him. I said, yeah, I said, come on. I filled up the gas tank canister that he had, and I sent him on his merry way. I said, you have a great day. He was also white. And I think about how it is not the case that I am always treated unfairly, but it is the case that I have experienced it in different occasions. And the frustration I feel sometimes isn't even just for myself, but it's for younger black males that have to grow up and experience what I've experienced. And truth be told, most of the time when I make YouTube videos in general, it is an attempt to help people not feel the way that I felt. And it is to try to give some type of peace or pause to this rage that I've also had inside my heart. Because on the one hand, where I've experienced people thinking the worst of me, I've also experienced people thinking that I was weak, and people pressuring me, and people pressing me, and people bullying me, and people thinking they can take advantage of me. Women in particular have also been a part of that. And so I understand that duality. I understand that friction and that rage in between these 2 points. And I think that it is quite fascinating that as young men, as we go through the world we live in, many of us don't take pause to understand how we get here. And so there is a disgust that I have for Nick Fuentes in many different regards. I genuinely despise Nick Fuentes. And to be quite honest with you, I do not wish that Nick Fuentes was afraid of black people. I wish Nick Fuentes was afraid of me. That's what I wish. I wish that I could be the one that made him wake up in a cold sweat in fear for the wasted potential this orator had. Nick Fuentes is a tragedy of the highest regard, and he does nothing good for anyone and anything. He is, in fact, a radioactive, toxic, cowardly jackass that helps make the world worse each and every time he opens his mouth. And the grand tragedy is, for as intelligent as he is, he could have done the complete fucking opposite. And so when you get Nick Fuentes clips like this, and when you get, unfortunately, the display of rage from Raja, we get more of the same of us pretending that black males are violent beasts who just like that. They just are angry, wrathful people. But it's unreasonable because we literally see what built up Raja in the first place. The duality of man is played, rather hilariously so, right in front of our faces in real time on the internet. You have Nick Fuentes, who wants to say that this is an example of black brutality and cruelty and honorlessness. But you also have the world and even the father, Ramage Jackson, bequeathing a story of weakness into Raja, where he feels that he must now prove himself as not a weak male and must prove himself as strong, so people stop calling him weak and lambasting him. Of course, it doesn't work that way. Why? Because we feed back into people like Nick Fuentes. We feed back into now, this is just how black men are. And now Raja is an example of all black males. Now Raja is the example of how black men or black people operate. Now Raja has brought us all down. And I think that it's unreasonable. I don't think it's fair. That doesn't mean that he shouldn't be incarcerated if, we find that assault and battery and all that. However long that is, I'm going to be honest with you, most of the time, well, it depends on the charge, so I won't speak on that. But it is very frustrating to me that we have a culture. It is very frustrating to me that we have a world where we are constantly browbeating young men. I mean, recent video I just uploaded, should be the video before this one, is people on Twitter saying the men of Britain are weak. We're constantly doing this to every male. This isn't just a black male problem, by the way. It might be the subject of the video somewhat. This is not a black male problem. This is a male problem. Like I said earlier in the video, feminists do the same thing. They use the historical violence of males to justify or to disregard, really, it's not even just, at least just, it is a disregard through and through of the present suffering of a male if another male does it. And shoot, they'll disregard it if they disregard male pain no matter what. If a female attacked a male, it's not like it would change anything from their perspective. And so men have to prove themselves constantly in so many different areas. And this is one of them. They have to prove themselves as mighty. But depending on what they do when they do it, they then turn into being a pariah. They then turn into being a beast. And to be fair, there is a wrong way to go about proving yourself not weak. That's fair. It is fair to suggest that there is a correct avenue or an avenue that is better than having to prove yourself in front of a crowd or prove yourself as strong in front of people. Fair enough. And that the true antidote to shame is not pride, but its source. And one must operate with humility and truly disregard the voices of those who do not matter and only wield their strength when it is justified to help other people. Fair enough. Fair enough that that's all true. But it's also important to note that these people who crash out like this are not born this way, typically. Overwhelmingly. They are always created. And they, as a male, are created by a world that is constantly pressuring them in two different paths, in two different ways, in two different scripts. It's particularly, again, as a black male, but even as a white male, it's the same thing. Asian, Indian, Japanese, really? Well, Japanese people are Asian. I digress. It's all the same. I remember there's this one kid growing up, his name was Mark, and I remember I used to feel so bad for him because he was short at the time. Fortune smiled upon him because he grew up to being 6'4", but at the time he was a very short kid relative to all of us. And people just used to mess with him all the time. And he had a reputation for having a short fuse and being angry and fighting people all the time. And it was quite fascinating to me that people kept messing with him when they knew what they would get. As a kid, I just, like this back in middle school, just befuddled me because you would think people would leave him alone, but they just wouldn't. They just wouldn't. And he was in a constant battle of fighting again and again. He was very wrathful. And I just felt so bad for him a lot of the time. You know, me and him, we became all right friends. I would say pretty good friends. We didn't spend as much time together as I would have really liked, but, you know, we became pretty good friends. And I always enjoyed talking to him and hanging out with him. Because the truth of the matter is, he was a very nice person. He was very sweet, actually. He's a very kind person. And people, because he was so short, they just always pressed him. And there would just be so many times he would just get into these fights, and I would just feel so bad for him, you know, because it was so unnecessary. It was just messed up. You know, funny thing about Mark is that he was a white person. Just in case that was important. Because that's what we do. We find each and every different dumbass reason to remove the humanity from someone. But the reality is, this is a problem. We shouldn't have pundits like Nick Fuentes trying to lambast black people as violent when young white men experience the same thing by the hands of, guess what? Other white men. Mark was bothered by other white guys and black guys. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. Race was of no consequence to how they treated Mark. And so, in conclusion, to end the video, what I hope is to get you guys to start thinking about the way we treat young men in general. And to start recognizing that when you see someone crashing out like this is probably the end of a long story of how they got here. And if anyone really wants to make the world even somewhat of a better place, we have to stop creating these men. Because nothing's going to get better if we keep finding every other dumbass, stupid fucking reason to say this is why the person crashed out. Even when we have story after book, after movie, after story, after video game, after story, after news story, after experience, after school shooting, after fighting, after gang violence of men crashing out because they live in a world that constantly puts pressure on them to prove that they're strong and then punish them when they do it the wrong fucking way. If you want the world to be somewhat better, you gotta stop this stupid ass cycle. Or don't. But if you choose not to, could you also choose to politely shut the fuck up? So that being said, I surely you guys got something out of today's video. And if you did, I don't know, man, go ahead and click the like button. Now shoot, go ahead and click the subscribe button. Comment in the comment box below. And as always, you guys have yourselves a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon.